a criminal usually has to do something really bad for Hollywood to make a movie about them. And Bonnie and Clyde are two famous bank robbers during the Great Depression and outlaws that ran from the police that have continued to be famous almost 100 years after their death. So why is that? The United States in the 1920s was having a really prosperous time. It was a great time in our country, one of the best times ever. But it all came crashing to an end in 1929, and our country entered the Great Depression. So the 1920s were great, but the 1930s were horrible. Our banks failed, and they lost everyone's money. So usually you put your money in a bank to protect it from thieves. But in this case, what do you do when the bank loses all your money and you go to get it and it's gone? And so it sent our country into a Great Depression. You can actually see a picture of this lady who, she actually got in trouble for that, trying to sell her children over here for money. And then a couple other moms that are really struggling just to live day to day. And all over our country, we had soup kitchens to feed people. Most people were unemployed, and it was just really hard times. You can see a soup kitchen line here. Here's one for children, and then this is what they look like on the inside. And a lot of people lost their homes, and they winded up living in these slums that they invented, and they named them Hoovervilles. And they were named after President Hoover, who people blamed for the economy. And they were all over the country, from Seattle to New York to California to Florida. And then to make things even worse, during the Great Depression, a lot of farmers took out their crops. And then when the wind started blowing, there was nothing to stop the wind. And this giant dust bowl started in the middle of our country, and it made it almost unlivable in this giant area of our country. And a lot of people lost their farms, and next thing you know, we have a food shortage due to the failing crops. And this is one reason why we have Route 66. It was the mother road from Chicago to Los Angeles, and it was one lane that could get you through the Dust Bowl, because if you steered off in the Dust Bowl, there was a chance that you could get lost forever and die from not being able to breathe well. All right, and so this is where Bonnie and Clyde come in. Bonnie and Clyde, during the Great Depression, would go and rob banks, these same banks that lost everybody else's money. And so Bonnie and Clyde would do that, and nobody expected this lady to, she was always dressed really nice, well-spoken, very polite, and then she'd pull out a gun and stick it in your face and sometimes kill people, and nobody expected her. The reason why Bonnie and Clyde are so famous is because Bonnie was kind of the first female serial killer in our country's history that was notorious. And so Bonnie and Clyde, how did they get away for so long? Well, what they would do was they would actually hide in Hooverville slums and give money from the banks that they stole to these people that had nothing. And so Bonnie and Clyde could have been hiding out in any one of these. And when the cops would come in, all these people would come out with their guns and rocks and start giving the police a hard time. And it was very dangerous for police or FBI or anybody to go in there. So let me show you FBI's actual page for Bonnie and Clyde. And so this is the FBI's actual page for Bonnie and Clyde, and they did have some of their fingerprints and other things on file. Bonnie and Clyde were young. They were like 23 when they were doing most of this bank robbing and killing. And they robbed several banks, and they were doing it in different states, so it was hard to catch them. They were going in Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas. And when you steal from the rich and you give to the poor, sometimes you're going to become a hero to certain people. But then the Texas Rangers and the FBI were chasing Bonnie and Clyde all over Texas and some other places. And eventually the Texas Rangers caught up and set a trap for them and shot their car 167 times, killing both Bonnie and Clyde. Both of them were hit over 50 times. And Bonnie and Clyde, like I said, they were heroes to a lot of people, and thousands of people attended their funeral. And there was more people attending their funeral than there were attending the police officers and bank tellers that they killed's funeral. So it was kind of messed up. And they made a movie about the actual chasing of Bonnie and Clyde and how the FBI at the time was getting all this new technology. They had airplanes that were able to do surveillance. They had wiretaps where they were able to listen in on phone calls. And yet it was two Texas Rangers, kind of old school guys, that were able to track down Bonnie and Clyde and eventually capture them through killing them.
How many bullets you got in you? 60. interesting, I think.
Might be good to have a doctor look at you sometime.
Might be good to have a doctor look at you sometime.
I ain't got no bullets in me.
Because I was covering you.
You may have heard there was a prison break. It was Bonnie and Clyde. Governor, this has to end. They committed armed robberies and several cold-blooded murders.
What do you plan to do about Bonnie and Clyde?
We will capture them. Write that down and underline it twice.
There's only one man who can take them down.
I'll come back.
Hey, you got room for one more?
Not packed. Ah, Judas Priest, get in.
This is 1934. Gangsters, submachine guns. Are you put cowboys on Bonnie and Clyde?
Texas Rangers.
This is an emergency alert. Police are not yet releasing details, but have stated that Bonnie and Clyde may have struck again.
I have seen
This is a highly coordinated operation.
so much pain and suffering.
Roadblocks, air surveillance. Your time's passed, cowboy.
What the hell's the world coming to? You had to have talent to get published. Now all you gotta do is shoot people. Dressed in a way.
She used her foot to turn him over so he could see what was about to happen.
How sweet.
This has gone far enough. I'm going to take them down.
What a fine idea.
Who are you fellas? Supposed we're the bad guys. Come to the wrong place, mister. Around here, Clyde is king.
But you didn't see me. Clyde might be king, but I'm a Texas Ranger, you little shit.
And some further activities that you can do at home. If you want to make a wanted poster, you can go to postermywall.com. They got some free templates on there. You just need a picture of somebody that you want to put up for wanted. And then also, if you want to read some of the FBI's famous cases, you can go to this link. There's lots of them. And just famous cases in American history. Especially if you're into law or you think that maybe one day you want to become an FBI agent, these are great to read.